This is Pablo Hidalgo from Lucasfilm, and you're listening to the Great Big Beautiful Podcast.
Have you ever been to Disneyland?
Affirmative.
That was definitely an e-ticket.
I can't believe all the new gadgets they've got now. For a while, we didn't even have a house phone, not to mention laser discs, high-def TV.
You are listening to the Great Big Beautiful Podcast. This week on the show,
some people are upset because we didn't capture it the right way, or some people very, very appreciate it because we captured it in a very fable-like way, but it's very real, relatable, believable. We really appreciate that, because if anything, we always talked about telling a story to start a conversation, not to tell anybody what to think or what to tell or how to feel anything. It's more about, can we initiate conversation with our audience?
Here are your hosts, Jamie Green and Justin Connors.
This is the Great Big Beautiful Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/the GBB Podcast, Twitter @the GBB Podcast, and on your favorite podcast download app, client, whatever. I don't know. You can find us. You're smart. You're tech savvy.
Your podcatcher of choice.
Exactly. And Jamie, you are fresh back. I don't know if we really want to talk about this today, but you're fresh back from an awesome cruise. That must have been exciting.
I went on the Joko cruise. And if you've listened to, Justin put me on the spot. I don't know what number it was, but if you go back and listen to, we had Jonathan Colton and Paul and Storm on the show, and we talked quite a bit about the cruise at that point. But it just happened. This is. Well, if you're listening to this, sometime in the future time, it's March of 2017. This was the 7th annual one that they've done. So it was out of San Diego, and we went down around Baja. So we went all the way down to Cabo, and then up the other side, which is the Gulf of California, to a really tiny town on the coast there, and they set up a music festival in the town square, and there was a food festival, and every day was like Comic-Con on the boat. It was just morning to night panels and schedule. The schedule was full of just tons of stuff. So I think we'll do a roundup episode. That'd be fun because I could talk. It was a full week, and I could talk endlessly about this. But I'm not going to bore everybody with it now. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I am very, very fresh back. It was not fun coming home. We had some weather.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, that wasn't so awesome. But the week preceding that was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's we'll have to do a whole complete separate episode.
We should
on that. That'd be fun because you look like you had a lot of fun.
I did.
So. This week, you guys took I know that Samantha has not talked yet. So you and Samantha, Jamie, have took the lead on this interview. So maybe you can tell us about it. What happened? Who did you interview? What's going on? Fill us in.
Well, first of all, we should say that Sam is sitting there very quiet like. So why don't you say hello?
Hello, I'm here.
You did so well the first time. Well, what we've been trying to do recently is bring people in who could give a different slant on things, a different voice, a different perspective, maybe are super fans or bigger fans than one of us might be of who we're talking to. But Sam came in on this. We talked to Robert Kondo and Dice Tsutsumi, who together formed Tonko House. Both of them, Robert and Dice, come from Pixar is their background primarily, but they come from a place of animation and storytelling through that animation. And they both, at the same time, sort of made a similar decision to leave Pixar and start their own company, which turned into Tonko House. And they did the short film, The Dam Keeper, which was nominated for an Academy Award, which not many people can say that their first directorial film, short film, whatever kind of film would get that kind of recognition. But if you've not seen it, you really do need to go watch it. It's like $2 on Amazon or something. Just go buy it, watch it. You will not be sorry. Like, it's only, what is it, Sam? Like 15 minutes? Not even?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just shy of 15, and it was amazing. I bought it on Amazon and watched it. I had seen it before, like a while ago. I don't remember where. And when we were preparing for this, I'm like, I should go rewatch that. And honestly, I didn't catch the nuance the first time through. And maybe it's things going on in life right now, but it really spoke to me the second time. And I ended up watching it a couple of times over the span of a few days. And it was very moving, and possibly not even the way they intended. Like they were telling us that the whole, the aspect of Pig being picked on or bullied or however, whatever term you feel like using, they used, I think they shied away from the bullying term a bit during the interview. That really spoke to me the second and third time around. And it's still speaking to me quite a bit. And it's just amazing how that's not even their focus in it, that part of it. And that touches so many people. It was just amazing that the subplot would be so powerful. Yeah, and this little tiny 14-minute or whatever film was amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing that a 15-minute film you can pull different things out of it depending on your own background and perspective and the mood that you're in the moment. So yeah, if you've not watched The Dam Keeper, you need to go watch that. They've also, they're expanding out on that world of The Dam Keeper and the characters that they introduced in that film. They're currently working on a trilogy of graphic novels for first, second books. We talked to them a little bit about that. We've read the first book of the series. It comes out in the fall. I want to say August or September. It's gorgeous. If you've watched the film, you know the kind of, they went for the same aesthetic. And so it looks very similar, but yet it breathes new life into that world because they're allowed to flesh it out and expand on it and dive deeper into the world, into the characters. So they're telling, it's a new story set a couple of years after the events of the film, so it's not like rehashing what was in the film. But they're also doing other things, like they're doing a television series for Hulu Japan that's also set in the same sort of storytelling world with those characters. But they're doing other things beyond The Dam Keeper. They're working on other films. They're working on both of them are artists in addition to being animators. So we talked to them a lot about, obviously, The Dam Keeper, about the books that are coming out. We talk a little bit about Moom, which is the second film that they worked on, and sort of where they're coming from in terms of inspiration and what those films are based on. Moom is based on a children's story, so we talked a little bit about why they decided to go with an existing property rather than an original story. But if you are a fan of animation and if you like this show, then you probably are, because we talked to a lot of animators. If you're a fan of The Dam Keeper, if you're a fan of graphic novels and first, second books in particular, there's a lot to love here. Sam,
Awesome.
did I miss anything, Sam? Do you have anything else you want to say before we dive in?
That was very thorough.
I'm sorry.
One thing One thing I would like to add is, much like, all of my experiences have been so far in participating, this would be my third time participating on your podcast, is just how stinking nice everybody is. It's just, they're not going to come on and insult you. I know that, but they're just so open to questions that may even be a little uncomfortable to answer. I think we did kind of ask them a few squirm-worthy questions about, what happened, to make them want that subplot about Pig being picked on so mercilessly, and those are very private questions. And the same thing with the prior interview I did with you, just so forthcoming, so open, so eager to connect not only with us, but with other people and fans or new people who don't know anything about their work. And these guys were no exception.
Yeah.
I hesitate to use it because it's, it's kind of quaint and very Midwestern, but they were sweethearts. They really were. I loved listening to them. And I wasn't as vocal on this one because I wasn't as familiar with their work as I'd been with some of the other folks, but it was just amazing to listen to them speak. I didn't want to interrupt them.
Yeah.
They're
full
just
of
go
stories.
and they would take our question and go fully with it. Like I didn't need to follow up with things. And they were good. They were fun to just, I was like, it was like they were telling me a story on the podcast and I just wanted to listen. It was that good.
And if you're not sold by now, dear listener, then I don't know what's wrong with you, because we're not trying to give this a hard sell because it doesn't need it, but we're doing it anyway because it was just so awesome. So please listen. We're gonna stop talking now.
So, all right. So we're gonna go play that interview for you right now. Hope you enjoy.
Robert and Dice, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
When you decided to further explore the world of the Dam Keeper after you made the short and you decided that you had more stories to tell and you were gonna continue and return to that, what made you choose graphic novels as opposed to doing more animation, whether it be short films or something else?
Graphic novels, I mean, it wasn't actually immediately our first thought to go into graphic novels. We are working, the Dam Keeper, we were working on several different things. One of the things we were working on is this feature film idea, and that was kind of one of our big aspirations when we started Tonko House.
Mm-hmm.
And we began working with this producer, Kane Lee, who was out of New York and really amazing producer who had begun producing things freelance and was working closely with us and kind of developing the feature. And he brought up one idea of, finding someone we'd like to work with to develop it into a book, into whether it was a children's book or a graphic novel, but some other kind of property to start to explore the story. And Dice and I were a little bit hesitant at first because a lot of times publishers come with their own ambition with what they want to do with a property like The Dam Keeper.
Right.
And we ended up finding Mark Siegel, and Mark was someone that Dice had talked to in the past before from First Second. And Mark, just when we talked to him, seemed to really get what we cared about and what we wanted to do with the film, with the story. And also, he didn't actually mind the fact that we were also planning to take it into a feature film, and that actually the graphic novel was going to be a part of our own development as artists and storytellers, was part of doing the graphic novels. Mm-hmm. So we kind of organically fell into this. And to be honest, we just kind of fell in love with Mark and felt like, oh, this is he's such a great person to just bounce stories and ideas off of. And he was someone that we felt like, regardless, was going to help us, kind of refine this story and these characters. And so for us, it felt very natural at that point that it was the right step for us to take. And given the look of the short, we felt like, oh, it'll be a breeze compared to doing, tons of frames, just one frame per kind of story beat. Of course, it's not quite that simple, we found out, but but it's been a lot of fun. We basically are kind of using it as both visual development, but also to learn a little bit more about the publishing world and the graphic novel world. And Mark's been an incredible coach and mentor to us, as well as his First Second team.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a phenomenal publisher, and I don't think that I found a First Second book that I didn't immediately fall in love with. I mean, everything they put out it's so lovingly created, and it shows in the finished product, and I've just loved every book they put out. So yeah, you guys found a good home, I think.
Oh, that's great to hear.
I wanted to ask you exactly about what you just kind of hinted at, is that you've managed to, with the book, retain the same aesthetic of the film, and I think that's pretty remarkable because the animation that you had felt very unique and it felt very different from what we would typically see, but you kept that very, very similar look in the book. How hard really was that to accomplish? I know it's not just taking one frame and putting it on the page and that's that. So, but how hard was keeping that look and translating it to a different medium?
I think this is Dice. I think in a way that was probably the easier part, because in a way the way our short ended up looking was the result of the way we paint and we illustrate. So, we both come from animation studios, just creating concept art, and that's exactly how we painted. And if anything, when we made the short, without really knowing, how to really make a film as a directors and writers, we just kind of went into our comfort zone of just, let's just use our paintings and somehow make it move. Of course, we ended up learning how hard it was, but at the time, the short made sense to look like that. So to translate that look into graphic novel, that was not bad at all, because that's how we normally paint. But what we found out was, just like Robert said, the telling a story through graphic novel format has its own sort of art, and we realized how different it is from film, and how different it is from just making illustrations.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, we really struggled a little bit in the beginning to make sure that our illustrated, art still translates as a story in panels, and not not to mention that it took much longer than we expected, because we had to paint every panel. But part of it, again, is that we just didn't know how else to do. Normally graphic novel art might be a little bit simpler. Even if it's in color, it's more like a flat colors and not really fully painted. And it's just that we just never done it before, that we didn't know how to go about that.
Yeah. The film felt like a very natural extension of the animation experience you had prior to starting Tonko House. I mean, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better term, and you'll have to excuse me, it had a very strong Pixar style, storytelling style. Aside from the narrator, it was wordless. It was very emotional. It spoke to these universal feelings that many of us feel. How much of a challenge was it for you when you made the shift to the books to give voices to those characters who didn't have voices when you originally presented them?
Yeah, I think that's something that, like you said, was one of the biggest challenges. Taking all of these ideas, and what's great, one of the things that we really enjoyed about making the short was finding how people, even though Pig didn't speak, that he had a specific tone to him and a specific voice to him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started to write things, it was interesting to hear ourselves and other people say, well, Pig would never say that. And actually, even though we would write out all this dialogue, especially for Pig, he still is a quiet character who doesn't speak much.
Yeah.
And so it was more about learning how to pare back and find those voices in a way that, whether the characters have voices or not, there's a lot of development that we put into the short. We talked a lot about who these characters are, how they spend their time off the screen as well as on the screen. So it's not like we didn't know the characters. It actually felt like the right next step for us to kind of sit down and have to articulate who are these characters, and what are they about, and what do they care about in their day-to-day. And then, I think for us, more than anything, it was about the craft of making a graphic novel. How do you create the same feelings, like pacing or a voice? What are the tools we use, using different fonts or different kinds of bubbles or different size text to kind of, imply whispering. And I think for a lot of people who are a lot more savvy in graphic novels, and actually Dice is from Japan, so graphic novels in Japan and the way that things are written in Japan, and especially like sound effects and things like that are used in a very different way. So learning how to actually not just find the voice, but actually learning the craft of graphic novels, and kind of how we knew how to do things with voice and film, but how do we actually translate into graphic novels was actually the biggest challenge, I felt like, to discover how to do that and remain honest to the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to imagine, like you were saying, when you developed the short film, you probably already had the voices for each of the characters in your heads, even though they didn't actually speak. Like you were saying, like, you know, Pig would never say that. You probably, because you were so close to the characters, you already knew them so well. So giving them voice and giving them dialogue probably felt like a natural extension of what already existed inside of your own head.
Yeah, absolutely. At least you know, that's how we felt. I mean, you guys will have to tell us, like, if you felt like.
I do. I mean, I read the book and I feel like none of the characters act differently from how I would have expected them to from the film. You know, I mean, they feel very much like they're the same characters, which I would imagine is what you were aiming for. So good.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
When you collaborated on the film, I know that you did some things together, like writing and storyboarding, and then you also did some things separately when it came to the animation. How did you divide up the work for the book?
Let's see. So, you know, just like the film, we developed the story together. We storyboard. So, you know, I don't know how other graphic novel artists go about their stories. So we really have no idea if it's conventional or not. But we basically storyboard the entire book, and we do it together. Mm-hmm. And then once we kind of lock down the story, we do this thing called a workbook. It's a bit of an animation production terms. I'm assuming it's kind of like a cleaning up the board so that it looks almost like a final, except that it's just a line work.
Mark called it, I think, penciling.
Penciling, okay. Yeah. In Japanese manga, they call it naming. I don't know why, but naming. So the workbook, in general, Robert took over because he's a much stronger kind of, especially when it comes to pencil work. You know, he did that, and we wanted to make sure before we start painting, all the characters and the designs had the same look. When we were boarding, we had slightly different looks. Mm-hmm. So we needed one person to take care of the workbook, and I kind of do a little more of the back end. You know, just finishing up the painting, especially lighting. And one thing about, you know, we're not publishing, but the actual workbook, which was done in line artwork, mainly by Robert, it actually looks like more of a conventional comic book, like, you know, line work with the black and white kind of shading. Mm-hmm. And I personally wanted to release that version because it looks so beautiful, but you know, Robert insisted that we painted, so we ended up spending extra months and months to paint.
I like how that landed on me.
Yeah. But also one thing that I love to mention is that we had a team of painters to help us. Book one, definitely for sure, but you know, book two we're actually about to finish, and book two, we had we relied on our team to do a lot more. But basically, we had a few artists painting, you know, just in a similar style. Just like animation production, we had painters that we trust, our team, and realizing our art in the same way that we would have done. But so that we can focus on the story part and then the basic design and the final touch-up we do. But we had a really talented people helping this book realize in the way that it came out.
I wonder, a lot of graphic novels will include in the back, like, you know, concept sketches and you know, things that were art that they want to share that changed as a result of development, but they still put it in the back as sort of like a quote-unquote special feature. I wonder if any of that line art that you like so much is going to make it into the back of any of the books.
Well, right now, the book one, because of the page count, we just didn't have room to include that.
Yeah.
So it's very kind of, part of it is also we kind of like the way the entire book design came about in a very clean, just not much excess stuff outside of our actual story, especially since our book itself, I think hopefully people can appreciate the art of that final look. But our hope is that at some point, eventually in the future, if people like it enough, or if First Second wants to, that maybe we can do a separate edition. Yeah, because we do have tons of artwork that I think it'll be a shame not to share.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. I talked to you guys for Geek Dad back when the book was first announced, and you had mentioned that the story that you're telling, at least in the book, it's a personal one, and it relates to an experience that Dice you actually had in your real life. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that at all, if you were willing to share.
Yeah, maybe is it easier the way we had that conversation?
Well, the anecdote itself, maybe, that's really up to you if you want to share. But I think overall, like, and forgive me if it's repeating a little bit, but for us, all of these stories, you end up spending, like so many artists, you end up spending so much of your time on these projects, and it really is kind of a marathon where you just need to find energy in all sorts of places, wherever you can get it, and keep moving forward. And after being at Pixar for a while and seeing what some of the best of their projects accomplished and how they accomplished it, one thing we kind of walked away with was really, whatever projects we do, or any projects we work with and collaborate on, we need to find some sort of level of personal connection to it. Mm-hmm. That's where we find that we can always find energy, because the film actually holds importance. And especially, I think, in the world we live in now, I feel like, the kind of personal voices that we have and how we feel and what we're going through is how I think we can best relate to our audience. And so this story really came from a story of Dice growing up and his relationship with his family. Not to say that it mirrors that, but that was definitely where this whole story started.
Sure.
We didn't have this real strong desire to come back to the one world we created together. We left to start Tonko House, and we were ready to make all sorts of things. And we have all sorts of different ideas and different worlds and characters and stories. But the reason why we came back to The Dam Keeper was because of this personal story that Dice had about him and his family. And that just resonated with me so much. Just seeing Dice talk about it and knowing Dice and knowing how much I understood about Dice, hearing this kind of story. And it just felt like it's not just a story that I felt like I wanted to tell. I felt like it's one of those stories that at some point in his life, I wanted to make sure Dice told this story.
Yeah.
And so it quickly, just talking about it became our first big film project. So, that's really how we hope to kind of continue creating things, is starting with who we are as people and not trying to tell stories that are outside of the scope of what we understand as people, and try to find a way to get those stories through, characters of whether they're animals or fantastic worlds. I think at the heart of it is truly a story about people.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
This is Samantha. It's my first time speaking. Figure I should introduce myself a little bit there. But I did want to pop in on this particular topic because, like, I think many people who watched the film and who are reading this first volume of your graphic novel, this story struck a very familiar chord with me, especially in my very, very younger years. I was often picked on. I was tiny, weird looking. I liked strange things that no other little girls that I went to school with liked. I was odd. And so, like Pig, I kind of had to find my own ways to cope with that. And now that I'm way older, I realize that my sense of humor, this need that I have within me to make sure everyone around me feels included and welcomed, whether that be into my home or into, just a social situation or at work, if there are new people or if I see somebody wandering around, I've got to make sure that person feels okay, that they're included. And even my drive to succeed now with my work and with other projects I take on, I think that to some degree, that's because of those experiences I've had. And what I was wondering was, do you get feedback from people who say, I totally identify as pig, or even fox or hippo, or maybe I started as a pig and now I'm a fox? do you get that kind of feedback from people, like fan mail kind of feedback?
Yeah, Samantha, thank you so much for sharing your story, because that's one of those moments where we get this, maximum satisfaction when we hear feedback like that. And indeed, we have heard so many feedbacks like that from many different people who experienced similar things through their, individual lives. And we always talked about, our short and even this comic book story, that the story, it is really not about bullying, but it is the very natural social dynamic that we all experience. And one of the things that we always talked about, and I think especially both Robert and I, both of us kind of confessed that, there was a moment in our lives that we were pig or we were hippo, like there are definitely aspects of us at some point in our lives that, I was the bully, like maybe not in the same way as hippo, but if you kind of categorize our characters, everybody kind of possesses all three elements. And Fox being kind of, from the short, she's a nice character, but basically she represents a bit of a witness. She represents people around these, bullies and bullied, and we felt like all three elements we possess, and we wanted to kind of convey all three characters in a sense, because that's very real to our world we live in. And it's not only when you're growing up, it happens in adults, the world, the society with adults too. So to answer your question, we do get a lot of feedbacks, a lot of encouraging feedbacks, and some people are upset because we didn't capture it the right way, or some people very, very appreciate it because we captured it in a very fable-like way, but it's very real, relatable, believable. And we really appreciate that, because if anything, we always talked about telling a story to start a conversation, not to tell anybody what to think or what to tell or how to feel anything. It's more about, can we initiate conversation with our audience?
Yeah, I think this whole experience of kind of telling stories, and getting more involved with both the graphic novel, the feature film, we're doing a series right now. It's really hard to, in the beginning, I think we all, both Dice and I would always say like, oh, well, Pig is kind of who we are, but Fox is kind of who we like to be. And Hippo is really who we like to try to avoid. But as we write these characters, it's impossible not to identify with all of them. And have to admit, I think both good and bad, who we are and our shortcomings that make us human and people. And but in order to write, like Hippo, I mean, there are moments where, we've written lines for Hippo where we're kind of excited, but we're also kind of looking at each other and like being like, where did that come from? It's kind of, writing, making film and telling stories and graphic novels is really, it's a lot of holding up the mirror to yourself, much like an animator does when they're acting out a scene to draw it out. I feel like to tell stories, you're constantly holding up this mirror and looking at yourself and having to admit like who you are and who you are not. And I think that's why, like, for us, it's amazing to work with, Mark, because I think Mark really gets that and understands that about what we're trying to do. And that for us, it's as much therapy as it is kind of, a creative endeavor that we're having fun with.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you for sharing, because it's really great. That kind of feedback and hearing about that kind of thing is the most rewarding for us.
Well, thank you. Felt like I had to say thanks back.
So my day job, when I'm not here talking to lovely people like you, my day job is in educational publishing. And the company that I work for, one of the central tenets of what we do and what we stand for is on whole child education. And that obviously includes a big focus on social and emotional learning. So in reading about what you guys have been doing with the story and the film particularly, it was kind of a thrill to see that you take the film into classrooms and you address these issues with students one-to-one. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Dam Keeper educational project and whether you're still visiting classrooms and how that's been going and how well it's been received.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that just came out of our sort of festival experience. Mm-hmm. Francisco Film Society had this program, they take films to classrooms in San Francisco, and we just got to be a part of it, when we first, started taking Dam Keeper around. And, out of all the fancy, amazing festival kind of visits, that was really our favorite experience while, just showing our film in the kind of small, somewhat dingy classrooms and, showing, projecting off of our laptop. But just the reaction we got from our 5th grade students just really stayed with us. So the following year, we contacted the Film Society again, and we just said, can we do this like as an actual program? Like, can we build something off of it? We really felt that was one of the most rewarding. If anything, what Samantha was talking about, like we really loved when the audience reacted to kind of bring on their own personal stories and personal experiences reacting to the film. So we kind of did that. We kind of experimented it at that point. And then we worked with some of the educators and, as Film Society, and we made the program, and that was really, really successful. We had such a great time. We aren't currently we're not quite equipped in terms of our schedule and the time to pursue that just yet, but we have that program in our hand, and we'd love to find a way to continue. So when we made our second film, Moon, which came out last year, we did the same thing with the San Francisco Film Society, and again, the same result. The kids, the way kids started talking about what they thought about it, how their personal experiences in relation to the characters in the film, even though it's not necessarily like a textbook kind of classroom thing, we felt like there was something that kids were trying to learn, and educators, who got involved in the program really appreciated, in a way, just using this kind of film or even stories as a medium to kind of pull some learning opportunity for kids.
Right. I think some of the educators we discussed, showed the film to and talked about starting to develop this program with, their first instinct, and we understood it, was to actually make it sort of an anti-bullying film. We actually had a strong feeling that is one possibility, but we really like this idea, like Dice is talking about, that for us, filmmaking was about just the opportunity to talk about the world around us. And if we could kind of bring kids into this place where, there are a lot of different ways that kids can express themselves, and the ways that are conventional to especially public education programs are not the only ways that, both Dice and I found alternative ways to express ourselves. And we wanted to present that aspect of it. We wanted to give the kids an opportunity to create their own characters, draw their own characters, but, to really start with, hey, let's talk about the world around us, and then use that to kind of inspire fictional characters in a fictional world. And it was really fun for us. I mean, I think it was really rewarding, and there was a lot of great people involved. And, unfortunately right now, like Dice said, we just don't have the resources to kind of go as often as we'd like and do it as often as we'd like. Sure. But with all of the films, part of the reason why we were still busy back then, but part of the reason why we made it a priority for us is because we hope as we scale that this is still remains a part of our company, and how we, taking responsibility, also a bit of responsibility for how our film is digested and in what context.
Yeah.
So it was important for us. I think I really hope the kids got a lot out of it, but more than anything, I think it was important for us.
Sure. Well, I wanted to flip this around because I know when you took the film into the classrooms, like you were saying, you wouldn't just talk about the one or two themes that they pulled out of it, but you would talk more generally about storytelling, and they let the kids draw their own conclusions and figure out, what does this character mean to you, and what does this represent. I'm wondering, for you, what does the fog represent?
Yeah, one thing I think it might be a little more in depth in the comic, the graphic novel, but from the short, we always wanted to represent our protagonist's internal darkness and how he's dealing with his darkness. So the dam kind of represents the way he's holding this darkness within himself, and sometimes it breaks, and sometimes you need to work to keep that dam going, or sometimes it's not strong enough. Whatever that is, it's an internal representation, or it's a representation of his internal darkness, the struggle.
So, obviously it has a bullying theme to it. And one of the things that I thought of was, as we progress through the next chapters, or the graphic novels and anything that follows along after the original film, will we see an end or a lessening to Pig's struggle? Like, are we going to see him start to overcome that darkness, that need for a dam? And then my next thought was, if you are going to go that way, will we see like a change in the coloration and tone? Will the artwork be what shows us that change? Since it was such a unique artwork to begin with, it was very intense, was actually the word that came to mind when I first watched this. It was a very intense animation style. And I was wondering if that would change any if you decide to go that route.
Yeah, those are really great questions. As far as Pig, kind of, one thing in the short that we were really very driven about and felt very strongly about, in the end of the short, Pig is in this place that the world around him actually picks up and moves on. And Pig is actually the one who's left, who has to change the way he sees things. His perception has to change. And I think that with this larger story, Pig is challenged on kind of such a greater level than he was in the short, that, definitely he has to change. Definitely the way he sees his darkness, the way he treats his darkness. He's got to grow up. He's got to kind of admit where some of his shortcomings are, and kind of also embrace who he is. And a lot of this character is about that, about embracing who you are and being comfortable in your own skin. And definitely the story is going to go where, that's where we're hoping to take it, is to really round out this character, kind of take him to a place that hopefully is a bit unexpected, but also is unexpected in the best ways, but also, fulfills all our hopes for this character who's been struggling with his own darkness. As far as visually, again, I think we're going to try to amp things up times 10. I think the stakes are much higher this time around. There's more characters involved. There's more worlds involved, more people involved. There's just so much at stake that visually, we want to challenge ourselves too. I mean, I think, this whole story takes us into new worlds and new places. And that has been a challenge, to kind of add to the world and build upon it, to not just leave it to where people expect it, but actually to build upon that expectation for ourselves even, has been a challenge. We're still, there's 3 books in the series, and we're actually wrapping up book 2 right about now, and book 1 is off to the printer. But book 3, we're still in that kind of early stage. But this is, book 3 is really where we've got to take us. We're taking the whole story to new places that we're excited about. So yeah, the expectation for us is to definitely fulfill those desires for ourselves and for the audience, hopefully.
It's exciting. It's kind of astonishing to me that you're telling the same story in so many different formats concurrently. So I have to ask how development of the feature is going and what you can share about the latest there.
Yeah, it's been really interesting because in one hand, it's wonderful to work on our story, whether it's a feature or the graphic novel, that we can really focus on this kind of big epic story that has this theme of coming from this central core idea that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge is also that each format needs its own storytelling to kind of fit the format. And we got to say, just kind of going back and forth between feature script and graphic novel has been sometimes kind of confusing. Some things have to be adjusted for the book and something have to be adjusted in the film format. And,
right.
and oftentimes we're even kind of mixing things up without knowing, and luckily our publisher Mark and Robin, they have been correcting us. Pig never said this, something that we used in the feature that oh no, he said that before, but no, it's never mentioned before in the book. But again, to answer your question, the feature is going well. We're very excited. The 20th Century Fox. We have a partnership to release this film with, and we're still in the beginning, phase to really kind of making this script as good as we can, because we want to make sure we don't compromise that part, that story. And it's really nice in that sense. Actually, having graphic novel is really wonderful because that's our map, that's our road map, and there's a tendency, especially in the big kind of animation production, that you kind of keep working on the story too long and you start to second guess too much. But having kind of a bit of a Bible in this graphic novel form is wonderful.
Yeah. So the feature is covering the same ground as the graphic novels, or is it going to be a slightly different story? Or can you not say?
It'll be, I think like any story that is being developed, this is kind of its early incantation, but I would say at this point, there's quite a bit of a divergence between.
Okay.
There are some things that I definitely think will be there in terms of overall where we're trying to take characters and things like that, but it is a different film, and I think, to be honest, the medium itself has actually forced some differences as well, like what works better in a graphic novel versus on film has also been some of the things that have driven some of the changes. And then also the fact that we have 3 books, and the 3 books, we want to stand on its own, have also kind of created a different sort of pacing than the film will have in the end.
Yeah.
And we still have, years to work on the film. So given that right now it's a little bit different, I think as we move forward on it, it'll become its own thing.
Sure.
Which is great because it keeps us interested. If it was just about, executing the same story and translating it, I don't know that we'd be holding the interest of the audience, in the sense that as we make it, we might be losing steam. Right. So yeah, it's a bit of a discovery process, I think. I think it's like uncovering a fossil and we just pulled a rock out and we a sledgehammer and started chipping away at it, but deeper in and deeper.
You're still scraping away to see what you can find, right?
Exactly.
But I've also seen mention of a 10-episode series for Hulu. Is that The Dam Keeper, or is that a different project?
It is The Dam Keeper, and this is a whole other thing that we brought in a really excellent creator, former Pixar animator Eric O, who we worked with. He was our supervising animator on the short, and he officially joined Tonko House to direct this series. And it's for Hulu Japan, and hopefully, we get to share outside of Japan as well at some point. But we kind of let Eric run with it. So you could say a bit of a prequel, like it's before the short, but we didn't really tell him that, we told him, don't worry about connecting too much to the world of the Dam Keeper, as long as we stay true to the characters and stay true to the world. In terms of a story, just take it to to your world. And Eric has his kind of distinct style of storytelling, and it's actually in the middle of production right now. We're creating it in-house, and half of the series is actually already wrapped out in animation, which is really incredible. But it's really wonderful, but it's not at all in the same story plot.
Yeah, one thing about, where we are, bringing on an artist like Eric O, it was great to have, he was our supervising animator on The Dam Keeper, and it was great. We knew that if we ever could cross paths with Eric again, we would jump at it. But, the feature development takes a long time, and, all of these things take a while, and it didn't quite seem to make sense to bring him in to work on the graphic novel just yet. And then this opportunity came up to work on a series, and we thought, man, this is our opportunity to bring Eric in and to just let Eric do his thing with no one knows these characters. We don't, Eric's one of those people that we just trust with our characters because he's worked with them for so long and cares for them as much as we do. And Eric, we just kind of felt like, hey, do your thing. Don't worry. Because Eric has, if you've seen his work, Eric has, I think, at least like a dozen of his own independent films that he's done himself. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted him to embrace that about himself and do his own voice. And that's different than The Dam Keeper, but that's the fun of it. And that's kind of where we are as a company too, that we can have fun with our characters and let them go into it. So the style, everything is just different than what we've done before. And we don't feel necessarily like we have, because The Dam Keeper is well known for its aesthetic. A lot of people talk about its aesthetic before they talk about anything. And for us, that's just a means to an end. It's a great tool to have to tell stories, but we're excited. We're artists. We love playing. So, just like when you're kids, it's like playing with Play-Doh or crayons or pencils or cutting out paper. We love playing. So when Eric came on and he wanted to do a short in a different look and a different style, that was exciting to us. And so this series is, I would say, Eric O's take on the Dam Keeper characters and world that lives outside of, our current storylines in a way, but is totally in line with the characters and strengthen the characters in a big way, I think. And for some people, this will be, the graphic novel, the feature film, or the series might be the first time they see these characters. So that's also exciting. There's a short out there that people can still discover that a lot of people haven't seen. So, sorry for being a bit long-winded, but it's how excited I am about, I think both Dice and I are super excited about Eric's series and cannot wait to share it with the world, because it's just, the team is doing phenomenal work. And
well, it's exciting. Like you were saying, it's exciting to see the same characters and this shared world, but take it in so many different directions, creatively and with the story and everything. And I can only imagine as the creators what that must feel like. But I speaking as a fan, I really do hope that it makes it back here and it doesn't just stay in Japan, because I would love to see it.
Yeah, we're working on it. I hope so.
Talking about the different aesthetics and the different artistic styles and loving to play because you guys are artists, I want to shift gears for a few minutes, talk about Moom, which looks very different from something like The Dam Keeper. I wonder, the shift to 3D CGI, after working on The Dam Keeper for so long, was it a challenge for you to shift back over, or did it feel like more of like a return to your roots, and it was more familiar because it was where you came from with something like Pixar?
Yeah, I think initially we went there because it was our roots. It is still our roots. 3D CG animation is really the animation experience both Robert and I have for years and years. And we thought, we did The Dam Keeper and we got our, it was really hard, like just painting every frame was really hard. So let's do it the easy way. That's kind of what we did with Moom. Only to find out later that the CG animation production is just so complicated, and working at a place like Pixar, sometimes you take things for granted because everybody's so talented and skilled and experienced at a place like Pixar, and the system is so well run that us being art directors at Pixar, that we only have to worry about certain things. Whereas Moom, even though it's a short, we had to really worry about everything as not only as directors, but also, CG animation in Japan is somewhat kind of a medium that they're a little bit behind compared to their excellent hand-drawn animation culture. So we had to actually find a way to kind of communicate how things we think might be done better because of our experience coming from Pixar. So that we were pretty involved in terms of how things are done, and a lot of things that they had to do was probably new to the animators in Japan. Sorry, I probably forgot to kind of mention, but the Moom production was done in Japan, and we directed from here. And that has its own kind of challenges. Not only it's CG animation, but it's just hard to work, people who live totally on the other side of the planet.
So for those who don't know, Moom was based on an existing children's book. It's not an original story per se, but just curious, what about that story spoke to you and compelled you to adapt it as a short film?
So, yeah, just like how we came up with this, feature film or the graphic novel story of The Dam Keeper based on the personal experience of mine. With Moom, because it was a pre-existing story that we initially didn't think it was the right project. We, at Tonko House, we really want to make sure the stories needed to be coming from the personal place. And adapting someone else's story just kind of didn't quite work out for us. However, it was an amazing, exciting opportunity to work with creators, from Japan who we respected, and the author of the book is just really talented storyteller. He's a film producer, but he writes, and Genki Kawamura, and we really wanted to work with him. So, just like The Dam Keeper, Robert and I started to do this, what we call the Tonko House therapy, like a therapy session, to really dig deep down into our personal, past. And then, after going through a lot of different stories, we found, Robert shared this story of his great-grandmother who got hit and run. And you were 3 years old or 4 years old?
Yeah, 4 years old. Yeah.
And then, even though there's somebody who's so important to you in your life, disappears from your world, but you're too young to understand what that means. And that very feeling, we felt like, that's Moom. Yeah. Moom is dealing with loss, but then what exactly is the story here? And we felt like, that feeling you had that you didn't quite understand, but definitely the feeling was there as a child, losing somebody in your life. That's Moom. That's our Moom. So we pitched that idea to the author of the book, and he loved it. Even though that's a little bit different from how he wrote the book, he felt like, let's make that version of Moom in the film format. And then from there, we decided to pursue production of Moon.
Wow. I wanted to ask you real quick about music, because it's so integral to your storytelling, but emotional and meaningful storytelling. And the composers who did the music for both the films, for both The Dam Keeper and Moon, were the same. And I'm just wondering how you originally got connected with them, and sort of how you approach the music for both films.
Yeah, so Dice, even before we started Tonko House, actually one of the big inspirations or reasons why The Dam Keeper went the direction it did as far as its aesthetic is because of this little promotion video that Dice had done for the sketch travel project. And it really was like he took paintings and basically started adding a few frames to his paintings to show it's like a hybrid between a children's book almost and an animation. Mm-hmm. And for that project, he worked with this musician that was here in Berkeley that had connected through friends, this Zach Johnston. And Zach was a filmmaker, editor, but also as kind of a self-taught musician whose sensibilities were just, for lack of a better way of describing it, just really poetic, sincere sensibilities. And so we started talking to him early on The Dam Keeper. And he was super excited about the project. He actually was part of a band called, and this is just a coincidence, but their band was called Fox. P-H-O-X. And they were really actually a pretty successful indie pop kind of band, really great group. And one of the other musicians, a good friend of Zach's, was Mateo Roberts. And Mateo was like a classically trained musician. And so the two of them were our composers, both on The Dam Keeper and Moon. And, unlike a lot of what we've seen as far as how animation typically deals with the composers, who are usually brought on late in the process after quite a bit of the film and story are done, we bring on Zach and Mateo really early on. And we actually involve them with the filmmaking process. And they do influence our films and how we tell the story and how the music works together. And sometimes, we want to time the animation to the music versus the other way around. And so it's a very organic process. And I feel like, with anyone else, they might be annoyed with us for requesting things at a certain time. But Zach and Mateo have really grown with us. And they're both actually in LA right now working on the Dam Keeper series, creating music with Eric O for the Dam Keeper series. And it's just phenomenal. They're doing such a beautiful job. It makes me so jealous sitting on the outside of that project. They're just great. Yeah. So they're two individuals that, are really, they're not part of Tonko House, but they are part of the Tonko House family for sure. There's no question that those guys are a huge part of what we do.
It's just beautiful. I mean, not enough can be said about the animation and the storytelling, but the music that you guys, I don't want to say lucked out in connecting with the film, but the music that you chose and the composers that you went with, it seems like such a perfect natural fit, and it really made the package like the perfect package, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. There's several filmmakers we've been really excited to show the film to, that we really respect, that have come out of the screening, and the first thing they said is, "Who did the music?"
Yeah, they want to steal them, right?
Yeah, totally. Really amazing. So we love those guys, and they're really amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Before I let you guys go, Dice, I need to ask you a quick question. I had Ronnie Del Carmen on the show a while back, and I cornered him. I cornered him about this, so I need to corner you two. You probably have no control over this, but will we ever see another printing of the Toro Forest project book?
Oh, that's a good question.
Please.
Yeah, that would be nice, huh?
Because I look on eBay, I look on Amazon, and I just can't afford the $500-$600 that people want for it at this point.
Well, one time I've seen actually $1,200. That's the most expensive version, yeah. But yeah, I'll work on it. Yeah, we've been requested many times, and it's been such a it's a complicated thing with the charity project with property attached to it, and it was such a dream project kind of it's hard to kind of go back and open up. And we even had a publisher who, was this close to actually releasing the second edition, but it didn't work out because they couldn't quite, they couldn't quite do the quality that we wanted.
Yeah.
It's really important for us because the reason why we did the book was to really thank our artists, artists who donated their work. So we didn't want to do a cheap book.
Yeah.
So the book itself cost just as much as we made money, from the book. So it was just a break-even kind of project, just so that people who donated artwork can, take the book as like a memory.
Yeah.
But nice memory. But yeah, I love to do that again. Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, I gotta imagine the copyright issues on that. I'm printing that or reissuing something like that. It's gotta be a nightmare. But
yeah, totally.
But yeah, I would love to get my hands on a copy. So any reprinting would be very welcome. Robert, Dice, thank you guys so much for your time. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Jamie.
We were talking a bit before the interview about not wanting to interrupt people as they talk, and you just wanted to listen. That reminds me of one time when we were doing the podcast, Jamie.
Yeah.
I still remember the guest, and it was Reiner Knizia. You can actually go listen to it. I edited it nicely. I was a good editor for that one. But I remember Jamie had asked him a question, and he was talking about it. And then all of a sudden, I asked the exact same question because I clearly must have zoned out. And he was like, well, maybe I must not have explained it okay enough. No, that's fine. I'll do it again. That's the time where you're just like, and then I realized Jamie clearly just asked that question, and I did too.
I remember that, and I remember kind of panicking in the moment because I was like, no, wait, I just asked him that. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And he was very sweet about it. I don't think he realized. I think he meant you were like calling him on it, like he had done some kind of like a politician thing, not really answered our question, so you were just gonna like be an ass and ask it to him again. But the funny part of that was, we're on Skype, so I can see your face. We use video. The funny part of that was watching your face when you realized that you had just asked the same question again. That was priceless. For that reason, I wish we had the video for that.
Yeah, I know. We're hard-hitting journalists on this podcast. We get to the root of everything. No, man, you got to answer that question again.
Answer it, man. We're not going to you're not going to get away with a softball answer.
You're not getting away with that board game question.
My goodness, you don't look like Paula Zahn, but you might be. This hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that, though, because I don't even try to hide the fact that I have ADHD. And there's always something around me, right? Yeah. It is surprisingly easy, no matter how fascinating the speaker is, to get distracted. So we did that interview with these two, and I was at work. I do a lot of these when we do them during the day. I'm at my office at work, and I mute everything. The phone goes straight to voicemail. I take care of this stuff, turn off my cell phone, that kind of thing. But they're just still like people walking by in the background, and then because they'll see the sign on my door, like "Don't knock, I'm recording" kind of thing, and then they'll stop and they'll peek in the window, like, "What do you think I'm recording in here, people?" I
know. It's like, ooh, she's got her webcam show going.
Woo! Yeah, and that kind of cracks me up because I'll see it. I see the reflection, and I'll turn around and there's somebody like literally peeking because I have blinds on the window through the crack. Like, what's she doing in there?
That's hilarious.
They're so distracting. So.
I don't blame you. I would be distracted by the creepy people peering in my office at me also, I think. It's kind of hard not to be distracted by something like that.
So as you can tell, we run a tight ship around here.
Oh, it's super tight.
We're pretty professional in our professional offices. Yeah. All right. So so I guess that's it. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about, James?
No, that's it.
I'm sorry. I'm tired.
That's good.
I can edit that. Okay. All right, so we're gonna shout out some social media here. Why don't we? Where can we find everyone around the table here?
Do I really have to shout it?
Yes.
There are people sleeping in my house. I shall just
Yeah, I'm not gonna shout because I feel for the poor people who have like earbuds in right now. Anyway, I'm Jamie at the Robots. Everywhere.
And I'm Justin at 140, Justin C. everywhere.
Samantha Fisher. You can find me on Twitter at Samantha Fisher. You can find me on Facebook, Samantha A. Fisher. Somebody stole my Samantha Fisher, clearly. Or you can find me on geekmom.com.
Perfect. And go like and subscribe everything that we ever post and put. So that way, also do it to the show at the GBB Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. And thank you guys so much. Hit the subscribe button if you don't already. Of course you do. But if you don't, hit it. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
This podcast has been a production of the Geek Dad Podcast Network. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/geekdad.